When people ask how databases are stored on a server, the simple answer is like how anything is stored on a server, in files on the hard drive. Well, how does the file structure of a SQL Server database work? Let's start off by taking the JPro code database that we're familiar with and completely getting rid of it to see exactly what our server looks like without the JPro code database. Now this database is gone. Let's look at our C drive and its current capacity. Now open up the Windows Explorer, right-click the C drive, get its properties. It looks like I have 499 megabytes free on my hard drive without the JPro code database. So what I'm going to do now is go to the hard drive, go to the Joes to Pros folder, and run the reset script 1.0. Now this reset script will put the database JProco back on my system, fully populated. Let it run for a while. Once it has completed its run successfully, refresh your databases just to make sure that JProco is back. Go back to your hard drive. Remember, it had 499 megabytes free. Now there's only 305 megabytes free. So it looks like it's taking up almost 200 megabytes. But where and how? That's what we're going to explore. We have seen firsthand that the JProco database is consuming about 195 megabytes on the hard drive. But where? And is it one file and many files? How is this being tracked? Well, let me show you the default location of databases that are created. If you go to the C drive and you go to the Program Files folder, there is a folder called Microsoft SQL Server. Expand that and go to the MSSQL10.MSSQL Server folder. Well, that's if you're using SQL 2008. If you're using 2005, you'll see a 9 here. Expand that and expand MSSQL and click the Data folder. Now, if you sort alphabetically, you will see two JProco files next to each other. JProco MDF, which is taking up 152 megabytes or a little less, and JProco Log, which is taking up 45 megabytes. Add those two numbers together and you see it's just shy of 200 megabytes. That is exactly where all of the data and all of the logging of JProco is being stored on the hard drive. So what's the difference between the data and the logging? Well, let's go for an example. How does SQL store its data in files? And the answer is pretty much the same way other applications store their data in files. We're going to take two identically structured WordPad files and save them as document A and document B. This one on the left will be saved as document A. This one on the right will be saved as document B. Let's go to document A. We are now going to log some significant changes to document A that are we not going to do to document B. Let's start off by saying we are making changes. And let's select that, even change the font. Let's choose red, say OK. And let's, why don't we make more of these? Why don't we make it bigger? Let's copy and paste this many times. OK, keep going. And now let's save it. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see these files are no longer identical with their data. It's also probably not a surprise to see that document A is much larger than document B. But now what happens if we go back to document A and we delete all of these changes? Now document A and document B, if I were to save them now, both documents would be exactly 1 kilobyte. But there is a difference you can't see, and that is how many changes document A underwent to get to where it is now is far in excess of how many changes went into document B to get where it is now. Therefore, document A has logged a lot more changes. To kind of see what some of the changes are, if you were to go edit undo, and then you see all of these changes. If you do edit undo again, and again, and again, what you are doing is you are traversing through the log of all changes, and it is accessing memory to find all of those changes. Now, if you go to document B and you say undo, there's nothing to undo. This is all that was happening. No changes have been made to this file, document B, since it was saved. Therefore, the log tracks all the changes that got you to where you are. But the file just tracks the amount of data that's in the file at the current time. So what's all involved with SQL data and log files? Where does the data go? And what type of data? So here's what we're going to do. Pretend you got a brand new database with no records and you just got one table called employee. There are no records in your JProCode database, so there's no records in your data file. And since you haven't made any changes to JProCode, there's no records in your log file. Okay, so data starts coming in. And you add one new record called Alex Adams. What have we got now? Well, now you have one record in your data file. And you also have one record in your log file. More data's coming in. So you add another record called Barry Brown. What's your status now? Well, now you have 2 records in your JProCode database, and you have 2 records in your log file. So you had 2 pieces of information, and you've got 2 changes. Now, how about updating an existing record? Employee 2 is coming back from leave. So we're going to change the status to active where it used to be leave. Well, there's still only 2 records in your data file, but now there's 3 records in your log file because 3 changes have been made since the last time you backed up this database. So let's say midnight happens. After these 3 changes affecting these 2 records, what happens then? Okay. So now it's after midnight. The backup is finished. What is the status of your data and your log files after the backup is done? Well, at 12:05 a.m., let's say, you still have 2 records in JProCode, so your data file is 2 records in size. Your log file, all the changes have been backed up, so your log file is now truncated, and it is at 0. It has no records in it. Okay, so day 2. After the backup, now you're inserting a 3rd record, which is another change. At this point, you have 3 records in your data file, and you have 1 record in your log file. How about day number 2, where we delete Barry Brown? Okay, employee number 2 is gone. Well, now the data file only has 2 records left in it, and the log file has experienced 2 changes, 1 insert and 1 delete, since the last backup. And it also has 2 records in its log file. Okay, now how about, what are these called? Where do you find them? Well, your data file is probably called jprocode.mdf, your main data file. And your log file is probably called jproco_log.ldf, or your log data file. So, see if you can predict how many records are in the following files. Okay, you start with an empty database. You add 1 record, and then you update that record. What would be the record size of your MDF? And what is the record size of your LDF? The answer is, there's only 1 record in your data file, but your log has recorded 2 changes. All right, how about another scenario? You add 2 records, you update 1 record, and then you add 1 more record. Well, you have 3 records and 4 changes. So now, you add 1 record, you update 1 record, and you delete the only record that you added. Well, that means you got no data, but you have recorded 3 changes. All right, let's start with an empty database, add 2 records, update 1 record, and then back up your database. Well, that means you have 2 records in your data file and no records in your log file because all the changes went to the backup. Let's get practice with some more scenarios. Let's predict the sizes. Add 1 record, delete 1 record. That means you got no data, but you've experienced 2 changes in the log. Add 2 records, update 1 record, delete 1 record. Well, you have 1 row or 1 record in your MDF, and the LDF has experienced 4 changes. Okay, so you add 2 records, delete 2 records, and then back up your database. That means you have no data, and since there has been no changes since the last backup, you've got no records in your log file. All right, let's start with an empty database and add 5 records. Back it up, and then update 1 record. That means you have 5 records, and you've got only 1 change made since the last backup. If you were to execute this statement above, you would have a T-SQL test DB created, and all of the defaults, size, and location would be chosen for you. But you can actually pick your own options if you don't want it to go to the C drive program folder's MSQL data folder. You want to put it in a special designated spot. You are free to set the options the way you want. Now, before we start this, let's go over to the C drive and make sure you have created your own SQL folder right on the root of the C drive. It's going to be very easy to find, and that's where we're going to put our MDF and our LDF for this new database. So, let me get rid of the word go, and we're going to say on. Now, everything inside the parentheses after the on will specify what's happening to the MDF. And the log, well, we'll say log on. And in a set of parentheses, we'll specify the location for the log file. Let's start typing away at the data file by saying name is equal to T-SQL test DB. And let's put the exact location of that in the file name, which is equal to C:\\SQL T SQL test DB.mdf. And then we will say size is equal to 20 megabytes. Okay, so this is our MDF, and this will be our LDF. Let's say name is equal to T-SQL test DB underscore log, and the file name is equal to the C:\\SQL T-SQL test DB.ldf. And we'll drop down one more line and say the size is equal to 5 megabytes. Now, how big do you make your log file and how big do you make your data file? Well, we're going to make it 20 megabytes because we predict we're going to hold about 20 megabytes worth of data. Even though it starts off empty, we want to be ready for it. As a rule of thumb, you usually make the log file about 1/4 the size of the database file. So, let's run both of these. It says command completed successfully. Let's check, and there we go. We have our 20 megabyte MDF and our 5 megabyte LDF. Now, if you couldn't see this code or somebody did it for you and you were wondering where this thing was created because it's not in the default location, just go find your database, get the properties, click the Files page, and it will tell you exactly what the names are you chose, exactly how big the files are, and even the location that the files are in. Time for Lab 1.1, Skill Check 1. You're going to create a database named Radisco. The Radisco MDF will be 50 megabytes in size. It'll be located on the C drive in the SQL folder. The log file will be 20 megabytes in size. That will be located on the SQL folder and will be called radisco_log.ldf. If you don't have a SQL folder on your C drive, go ahead and create one for this exercise. When you're done, your screen should resemble the figure you see here.